Hi, Glenn. How do you reply to the concern that there are not enough checks and balances in the Earth Constitution, that the World Parliament is the most powerful of all the branches, and then it seems like the judiciary and the executive are below that, and even the ombudsmen are voted upon by people in the parliament. So, how do you deal with that concern?
Well, I think that when you get 1,500 people from every corner of the earth who are educated through the Institute on World Global Procedures and World Problems, you have the best. Bertrand Russell said, "Democracy is a terrible system, but it's the best one." Right? It's the best of all the, and you have the best that can be done. Right? Who are we going to put over them? Some minority in the judiciary. In the U.S., we have 12 idiots, on the Supreme Court, and so I don't think there's any that I think the safety is precisely in their diversity and their numbers, and I can't personally imagine how, if you had an executive that could veto legislation, you'd have a small group of people dictating something to all these representatives who are duly elected from around the world. I don't see any other way of doing it.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Okay, next up is Lynn and then David Orton. Go ahead, Lynn, take yourself off mute.
I just wondered, when the discussion was happening about environmental hazards and international regulation of those, and like China, and I just wondered how it would be legislated through the World Court that, we've been expropriating or outsourcing all of our manufacturing to China for many years, and it's really not fair for them to suddenly say, well, it's all equal now. Do you get the idea of what I'm saying, Glenn? And also, I liked what you said about Hannah Arendt, and wanted to hear again what you said about her and the large scale of things. Anyway, go ahead.
Everywhere. Part of what I argue is that any constitution creates a moral reality, right? So one of the things that so shocked us about January 6th is they seem to have broken the social contract, right? The idea that we're a moral framework under a constitution and so on. But now we have a moral reality for human beings, right? That transcends in everywhere. If you remember from reading these first 9 articles, everywhere, the legislators and the members of these agencies have to take a pledge of service to humanity, right? Not a pledge of service to any particular in the United States, it's against all enemies, domestic or foreign, but there's no enemies here, right? So now you have the capacity to really do service to humanity, which means that they're going to be thinking in terms of justice, right? And true, China is producing all this. No one wants to be unjust to China, right? But much of what China produces comes to the United States and is appropriated by the rich who own these multinational corporations, right? That has to be modified. You just can't have a system like we have, a world system, which ultimately, after 4 centuries of operation, puts 50% of the world's wealth in the hands of a tiny fraction, 1% of the world's population. That's just unjust. So the goal of justice and equitability is built into all these things, and so I think we have to say that the World Parliament will be making decent decisions, right? They've got the mandate, create an equitable world system, and the World Parliament will be full of Chinese people, right? China has and they're not going to want to vote against their own country and so on. they're going, so you're going to have a mandate for the whole, to make it a decent world for everybody on the planet. Okay, and then Hannah Arendt, she said that power was a good thing because power comes when government is supported by its people, right? A government that is with the real consent of the governed and the enthusiasm of the people for their government is powerful. That's where power comes from. And insofar as government loses that consent and that underpinning of the real authority of the people, then the government has to resort to violence of various forms, she said. So what we want to repudiate is not power, she said, but violence. And if you look at this Constitution, everywhere it is designed to reduce violence. Even the world police, as we'll look at in 2 weeks, right? Even the world police designed to reduce violence. Okay, a couple other questions.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Let me just say we've officially reached the end of our time. Glenn, if you could stay another 5 minutes, I'll get another question or two in, and also I'll check to see if there were any announcements that any people had. So Glenn, first question is to you. Do you need to run to something else, or can you stay another couple of minutes?
I've got hours.
You're available. Great. Second question to the group. Were there any group members that had either a book, a program, or anything they want to announce? Because I'll then give you time for that. Okay, I see Arthur. Anybody else? Okay, so Arthur, let you get your minute in right now while everyone's still here, which was my promise, and then we'll extend the session for 5 minutes for those that have other questions. So Arthur, go ahead, and then I'll get back to the queue that we had. David Orton is up next after that. Go ahead, Arthur.
Well, very exciting presentation, Glenn, and thank you so much. I especially like the thing you were saying about money, and I think our need to create world money, and that's a whole different issue. But the announcement is that we, as some of you know, we have amazing opportunity to have our film now on public television stations across the country in April, and we have a GoFundMe, which we are working on right now. We're doing it in cooperation with Rotary International because we figured this may be a way to draw in more funders. What we need is we're trying to raise right now $20,000, which is crucial for having the station relations rep, the promotional person we need to get a big audience and so on. And I'll put the GoFundMe in the chat, or if Melanie, if you're listening, if you could stick that in the chat right now, I'd appreciate it. But what we'd love is everybody to just come and, even if it's a little bit or more, it helps push our thing and get it going. We're doing it as a salute to Rotary because we thought, there's little ads before PR, before there's public television stations, and they're not called ads, they're called underwriting spots, but they're sort of the same thing, except you can't say bye. And we're doing it that way because we think that'll attract more of some other funders. But it's really basically to get the film really promoted and out there on TV. So we'd love if all of you could just go to that GoFundMe and join in. I don't see Melanie typing it in, so I will. What it is just go to theworldismycountry.com/Rotary, and you can kick into the GoFundMe. Every little bit hurts. If it helps, if it's just $5, it'll help.
it is in there now, and thank you. Yes, we're in overtime right now, so thank you.
Melanie has it in there. The GoFundMe, you'll see it there. Okay. Great.
Lynn, I see your hand.
Save the chat by clicking on the little dots in the corner and save.
Thank you, Arthur. We must move on. Lynn, was that an announcement too for an event or something? You're on mute, Lynn.
I just wanted to clarify with Glenn that this would be back due. This justice that you spoke of would also be back due.
What do you mean by that?
From our non-global government times when certain countries had more burdens than others.
Yeah, they don't want to, it's not going to be an oppressive system. Everybody's represented in it, but we really do have to make major systemic transformations, right? You can't have sovereign nation states owning, Brazil owning the lungs of the earth, and destroying them. You can't have this competition of different currencies. So if I go to Togo, for example, where we have a chapter, $1 is worth 7,000 of their currency, right? And so if I have $10, I'm super rich. We're going to have to, without undue burden on anybody, we're going to have to transform this world system. It just is not. It's unjust. It's power based. It's exploitative. It's got to be changed. And the World Parliament has the mandate to do that. It has the power and the authority to do that.
Great. Thank you. We had David, Arthur, and Gail in the queue. Then we'll wrap up. So take it away, David Ott.
And several times in the Constitution, it talks about the 5 continents, but they're not explicit in the Constitution, as far as I know, although you did mention them. But the problem with the 5 that you mentioned is whether Russia is part of Europe or part of Asia, whether the Middle East is part of Asia, whether Australia is part of Asia. So how would all those questions be decided?
By the World Parliament. The World Elections and Boundaries Administration that we covered a moment ago, its job is to make sure these electoral districts are all equitable, but also its job is to divide them into larger groupings, right? So there's 10 magna regions, 20, and so as it's dividing them, it would make the administrative decision where Europe stopped and where it began in terms of Russia and so on. And as just for me to repeat, I don't think the World Parliament will be torn apart by political bigotry like the US Congress is. I think the World Parliament will be there with a mandate to do well for everybody, and they'll be working together to do everything. So this whole idea of political parties, with their rabid dog ideologies will be gone. And so I don't think it'll be a big deal, when people say, okay, Asia stops here. What are we going to do with Australia? And those kind of questions.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Arthur, did you have a question for Glenn, or was that your announcement that you made before?
No, I do have a question. And
Great. Fire away.
On the thing that you mentioned about the fact that money is created privately, this is something that, across left to right, people are worried about. Even the people storming the Capitol, they hate that the central banks control an economy that actually doesn't work for the people and actually is making people less poor. I think that's sort of a key to moving this forward. Do you see ways that the idea of creating a democratic global currency, especially with all the cyber currencies and things happening, new opportunities for moving that forward in a big way?
I think the only way to there's we work with one group called Mana, right, that have a digital currency that's called Mana, and this it's an alternative to Bitcoin, and it's free, right? So you can they have an NGO, and you can get a wallet, and insofar as they grow, as Mana grows and becomes more, they just distribute the money to everybody, right? That's a good thing. So we're for that kind of thing, spreading the idea of alternative communities, currencies, and fair currencies. But ultimately, it's got to be done for the world, right? Because the global powers in the world, if you read Ellen Brown's book, for example, she gives all kinds of examples, currency manipulation, right? So the United States, if it wants to bring down Chile after they democratically elected Allende in 1970, it manipulates the Chilean currency to make it, crash and so on. You've got to stop this absurdity of power being in charge of currencies and make money, as I was saying, a public utility for everybody, right? And we passed, the Provisional World Parliament passed one Provisional World Legislative Act with a guaranteed annual income for everybody, right? Once the digital revolution takes all these jobs away from people, and machines and robots are doing these jobs, people are going to need an income. And the world government can easily supply this because money creation is not created as debt.
Great. Thank you, Glenn. Gail, you have the last word. And since you're also the coordinator of the book club, you can bring us to a close and remind people of the next session.